Now, before we proceed, I would like to remove a possible misunderstanding regarding the title used with reference to me. It was said the Supreme Commander of the Faithful. Now, the title suggests perhaps that I lead and command an army, and this is a very misleading title. In fact, the original title by which the first caliphs were addressed at the time of after Hadhrat Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's demise, that is, after the demise of the holy founder of Islam, the title was Amirul Mu'mineen. Now, this title was translated by the Western scholars as the Commander of the Faithful, and as such it got established itself in the world of literature. Perhaps they wanted to create the impression that it was not the leader of a humble community, godly people, but a militant, organized group or regimented group which was led by the caliphs of the time. So I don't know what the reason was, maybe this or may not be this, but I know that this title in the present context particularly is very misleading. And normally the head of the Ahmadiyya community has always been entitled and referred to as Khalifatul Masih, which is a simple, non-hawkish title, not too dove-like either, but it has no offensive air about it. It means that the one who is deputizing the Messiah of the age. So that's a simple title. I would much rather be referred to as that. And another thing, the word supreme is used now more often than before. While before I came over to England, neither I nor my predecessor were ever referred to as the supreme head. The head of the Ahmadiyya community was considered quite sufficient, and I still consider it to be quite sufficient. When I protested against this new addition to, I don't know for what purpose it was used, but to add perhaps glamour to the title, the answer was, it's not because of that at all. It was because here the head of the Ahmadiyya community of UK is also called the head of the community in Germany, is head of the German community. So people here may misunderstand you to be only belonging to this country. But I doubt if it is necessary at all, because everybody knows, everybody has common sense enough to distinguish between one office and another. And look, whenever we say Amir, head of, we'd never say Amir, head of the Ahmadiyya community UK. We call him Amir of UK. So first of all, Khalifatul Masih is quite sufficient and has long been traditionally used without causing any misunderstandings. Secondly, if the head is to be used, then there is no need for adding supreme or less supreme, etc., etc. Now I invite those of the guests who have come here to ask a question or two. They may please step forward and come to the microphone, one after the other, of course.
Assalamu alaikum.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
My name is Shahid Ahmad Qureshi and I came from Pakistan. I'm doing PhD and working as a research scholar.
In which area?
Pardon?
In which area of research?
I'm working in
what? Yes.
I'm working in the field of political philosophy And my topic of PhD is identity crisis in Pakistan.
Right.
So my question is that Islam, as we believe that Islam is a way of life, do you think Islamic system can be applied without providing the economic, political and social systems of Islam? If we pay more attention to these, we can overcome all kinds of crises in the Muslim world. And what is your Jamaat doing in this regard? Because I think that faith is very important, but living is, your existence is more important. Because if you exist, then you can believe in some faith and one or the other way. So what is your Jamaat doing in developing a system of...
You mean the issue has deteriorated to a degree that it has become a survival question? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yes, that's right, yes. Survival of the Muslims as an entity. Is that what you mean, or Pakistan is alone?
You know,
I mean, will you include all the Muslims of the world facing this crisis, or only the Pakistanis?
especially the Pakistanis and all the Muslims included.
Quite right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jazakumullah. It's a very difficult question in the sense that in a short time it will not be possible to cover all the possible aspects of the question. But in fact, Islam is considered to be a way of life, a complete way of life, by all. All the sects and divisions in Islam have no two opinions regarding this issue. That Islam is a way of life which covers all aspects of human life. But is it a new type of religion which was such as was never revealed before? That is the fundamental question with which we must start. What about other religions which came before and elsewhere in the world? Were they not a complete way of life for meeting the requirements of that particular time and that particular people to whom that religion addressed? I don't see any evidence in the Holy Quran, anywhere, or in any other religious book, which distinguishes religions from this point of view. Of course, the Muslims claim that it is more complete. It is perfect because it happens to be at the summit of religious evolution. But any other distinction as far as the coverage of religious subjects is concerned has never been made anywhere. So in whatever way the first religion revealed to Adam was the complete way of life for that period, so also was the message of Noah, a complete way of life for that period. Then came Abraham and Moses and Jesus and Hadhrat Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So an evolutionary trend can of course be established, but not that. They never dealt with economy, they never dealt with political aspects, but it's only Islam which has invented this new thing. This is not true. Islam is a religion, and as such it is also referred to as deen. The word deen is a very wide word of application, and it is misunderstood by people to mean only God-made religions. The Holy Quran rejects this view, and Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is told in Surah Al-Kafirun to address the idolaters by saying, Lakum deenukum walaya deen. For you is your deen, and for me is my deen. So the word deen has nothing to do with, it cannot be monopolized by revealed religions. According to the Holy Quran, everybody has a title to call his way of life as deen. So most of the arguments presented by the current day Muslim scholars, or particularly the extremists, revolve round the word deen. They say deen means everything and all things in which man could be interested. But what about the earlier deens? Were they not called deen? The Holy Quran refers to all the religions as deen. So this is a very flimsy way of drawing conclusions which do not belong there. As far as we understand the Holy Quran and the Quranic message, it is primarily a religion which teaches the ideal relationship between man and man and God. But it does not monopolize this role and has enough accommodation for non-believers and other religions to flourish within the Muslim society which has been given the political domination. Now, if in any country a Muslim society is given a political domination, what right do they have is the question, main question, of imposing their way of life upon those who do not agree with that way of life. Does Islam anywhere grant that right? If Islam does, then of course the question would arise as to what is the way of life of Islam. And the rigmarole would begin, and the Pandora's box would be opened, and the debates would begin between Shias and Sunnis and Wahhabis and Barelvis and all sorts of people within Islam, indicating one to be the way of life of Islam and the others indicating another to be the way of life of Islam. But such a problem would not arise in the first place because, as I can prove from the Holy Quran suggests no political system for the Muslims except one political principle which it emphasizes, and that political principle to govern all the politics is simply this: وَإِذَا حَكَمْتُمْ فَإِذَا حَكَمْتُمْ بَيْنَ النَّاسِ أَن تَحْكُمُوا بِالْعَدْلِ. Whenever you come to power and rule people, the only thing you must be guided by is that you must rule with absolute justice. Absolute justice is another definition of secularism. Secularism could not be better described than absolute justice. Anyone who is a inhabitant of a country possesses all the rights which any other inhabitant of that country may have, and no distinction can be made between the rights of one from the rights of the other, or the fundamental principle of absolute justice will be violated. That is one thing. But some Muslim scholars may say that is as far as non-religious deviance go. When you come to religious deviance, then a different principle applies. The moment they claim it, they again violate the principle of absolute justice. Because the principle of absolute justice would have us only one yardstick to measure all things. So how could a religion be an advocate, a religion be the advocate of justice, and yet draw a large line between justice pertaining to non-religious groups and justice in application to religion versus non-religion, or one religion versus another religion? This in itself a very grave violation of the principle of justice. But more than that, the Holy Quran covers this aspect already. it gives light to all those who entertain such views. Because the Holy Quran, using the same style, in another verse says, La yajrimannakum shana'anu qawmin. The enmity of a people towards you must not permit you to treat them with injustice. And two verses of the same type are found in the Quran. In one, religious enmity is not mentioned, it is the general principle. But in the second one, the Holy Quran further elaborates the point by declaring that even if a people have been your religious enemies and have treated you wrongfully and they've been unjust to you, the thought or the memory of those injustices committed against you by religious people may not permit you or may not incline you to treat them with injustice when you come to power. The Holy Quran again repeats, "Edilu huwa aqrabu lit-taqwa." You must stick to justice. This is closest to taqwa, and without taqwa there is no Islam. So this is in nutshell the answer to your question. Other aspects will all be covered by the same answer. In fact, all the teachings of the Quran are completely governed by this overruling principle. This is the religious principle in Islam, in the Quran, which covers not only Islam but also other religions. Right from the time of Adam, the Holy Quran keeps a history record which all of it revolves around the principle that each prophet of Allah advocated justice. And all opponents, religious opponents particularly, advocated injustice in the name of religion. And that is exactly what the mullahs are doing to Islam today, unfortunately. So without coming to this fundamental principle which is prerequisite for all peace, it's impossible to avoid the dangers to which the Muslims in general are being drawn very powerfully, as you suggested. There is no panacea for all these ills except this, that they must return to the principle of absolute justice. Thank you. Any other question, please? Yes, please, most welcome. Please occupy the seat here. Wa alaikum salam, rahmatullah. Would you kindly introduce yourself briefly?
Yeah. My name is Sahid Morafa.
Right.
My basic background is sociology. I am a Nigerian.
Right.
I live between Nigeria and England. Once upon a time I was permanently resident in England, but now I've shifted base. I got two questions actually. One is what I may call political, the other is purely religious. I may start, first of all, with what I consider the political one.
Right.
And that is referring to the present slogan now being sung across the Western world, the New World Order.
Right.
What is this order? Where is Islam in the New World Order?
Right.
That
is the religious question.
Yes.
The second part.
No.
Islam, where in Islam is?
Yes, I'll come back to
Let's
summarize.
first stick to the first part, which is a political question, as you said.
Yeah.
What is the meaning of the New World Order? Exactly?
Yeah.
Right?
But if I may just,
Okay.
essentially, I'll deliver the question, I'll wrap up with my question.
Right.
Now, is Islam not the target of the New World Order? Why I say that is that the New World Order, as I can say it, is now a sort of verbal aggression, primarily against Islam. And if I may take one or two examples, we have all witnessed for some years now turbulence in Northern Ireland between Catholics and non-Catholics. But nobody has ever referred to it as a religious war. Nobody has ever referred to either Catholic or Protestant guerrillas or, what might not, against none other guerrilla. But whereas we find that the New World Order targets now the Muslim world in trying to divide the Muslim world so that the Muslim world could be conquered. Iraq's situation is there. Now we can all see that the Muslim world, well, what we normally call the Muslim world, is not disintegrating. We're having factions now, pro and con Western world. We look at Pakistan, for example. I don't know how many of us saw the program on, I think this week, about the Sunnis and the Shiite Muslims in Pakistan, whereby it's being introduced that what is going on in Pakistan is nothing but a religious war. Alhamdulillah, about 2 days ago, it was on the same television when the two factions, the leaders, met and proclaimed that this is not a religious war. Rather, terrorists are being infiltrated, sort of sponsored to really cause this commotion. I'm sorry, I have to, quickly wrap up this question. The same thing, if some of us who watch the programs about Indians and Pakistanis in this country, it was being projected as if one group is superior to the other because of religious difference. This is what was played, I'm sorry I have to, cite this example.
Oh, you don't have to be sorry at all.
Okay,
please.
Because it's been referred to
Enjoy
about
yourself.
the Muslim Pakistanis children, and the Indian Pakistanis, Indian children and that kind of thing. All right, this again I see as an incitement of one group or the other, divide and rule them. Okay, now without prolonging this too much, I am now sensing that the New World Order, that is after the demise of the Cold War, that is the demise of the communism, Islam happens or looks like the target now as the order that is creating this problem for the Western world.
Thank you.
Okay, if this is the case, or if you share my view, what is Islam doing in this region?
Is the second question you are now raising,
now I'm bringing
the one which you said would be religious?
Right. Now I just want you to answer the question now.
Wait until I finish the first one,
yeah.
Then we'll come to the second one.
Okay.
Now first of all, you started by posing the question to me as to what was meant by the New World Order when they speak of it,
yeah,
everywhere nowadays. So I would like to ask you if you ever heard of an English expression, old wine in new bottles. Have you ever heard of that?
yeah.
So that is my answer. There is nothing new about it. It is the old wine in new bottles. The same historical role of the powerful nations towards each other as well as towards the non-powerful nations continues to play its role as unhesitatingly as it ever did. There is no change whatsoever. And the factors which determine these policies are national interests. So in a nutshell, this is the answer which is applicable to all international relationships. And in that, nothing has changed. Right?
Correct.
Now, coming to the implications which you mentioned later on of the New World Order vis-a-vis Islam.
Islam, yeah.
Now, I don't think it is Islam itself, it is the political role of the Muslim world, historical political role of the Muslim world, which is invoked by the changed circumstances, particularly in the light of what happened in Iraq and vis-a-vis Kuwait, etc. And Libyan so-called militantism and the so-called Iranian militantism and the so-called Islamic atomic bomb all these things are the parts of the same jigsaw puzzle. They fit into the same single answer, that the rivalry between the Muslim political world and the Western political world, which once was described as Christian political world, continues to play a very important role in the relationship between the Muslim countries and the Western countries. It had never ceased. It was only subdued because of Russian polarization against the Americans or the Westerns. So whatever was as an undercurrent has come to the surface. That's all the change we have seen. Thank you.
Okay.
Second question, please.
Yes. Might be just a summary of what you have just said. Now, what is Islam doing or should do about this situation in which we find ourselves?
Which
Jihad
Islam?
these days is not. Now, I'm not referring to the Ahmadiyya movement.
No,
now.
I understand.
Yeah.
But when you refer to Islam, the question is still
Muslims,
valid.
yeah.
Muslims should do.
Yeah.
The best answer is for them to combine politically, not religiously. Because if you wait for their religious deviance to be, or differences to be sorted out, so that they can make one single religious entity, you will wait till eternity.
That's true.
Right? So the best answer, alternative answer is that they should strive for forging a political unity among the Muslims, in which the religious differences must not be permitted to play a role. If this is accepted as a whole to the Muslim world, then a really new world order can begin to emerge, not otherwise. But unfortunately, the major opponents to this only formula of survival would be the mullahs, the religious clergy of Islam itself, because they thrive on religious differences. Right or wrong?
That's quite true. That's quite true. That's what gives them their eminence.
Yes.
Okay. Can I just briefly ask the second question?
Yeah.
The second question is, where is the difference between worship and prayer? I'm asking this. Maybe some of us who have read the pamphlet Salat will see that in some areas these two were just opposed. Whereas to my mind, the difference between worship and prayer is actually the basic difference between Islam and other religions. I am of the opinion that those who translated the Quran initially have got at the back of their mind another, religious training, which they used, which influenced, wittingly or unwittingly, their translation of the Quran.
Right. Yes.
Prayer, I think, is optional.
Prayer. And worship?
Worship is compulsory. When you talk about prayer, just use it in the ordinary day thing. If you have something, I can pray your office to please do and such a thing. I have a request. But in Islam, there is the difference between Islam and other religions. If you believe in destiny, you may not pray. You may not ask God. If you ask God for anything, it's your choice. But you must worship Him. It is compulsory and it's stipulated. You got to do it 5 times a day. So
and
I think
where lies the difference? Where lies the difference between Islam and other religions, as you said earlier? Is it in the area of worship or some other area?
Oh, there are other areas. But when you talk about worship, Islam makes it compulsory that you must worship God.
What about other religions?
I've listened to other people saying, look, I'm going for morning prayer. We're going for evening prayer. And when you get in for the evening prayer or the morning prayer, all you do is, pray. But you don't pray and say, God, please give yourself money. You pray for yourself. You ask from him. Worship is what he demanded you to give to him.
Nobody can give anything to God.
No. But what he demanded is that I've created you to worship me. And you must worship. It's compulsory.
Why? Just to pay homage to him so that he can sit, relax and enjoy.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't eat salat.
You see, the word worship is an English term.
Okay, that's what I want to clarify.
Yes. It is not the Arabic term used to indicate the English terminology of worship.
Good.
The word ibadah is the word used by the Holy Quran. And in that, the Holy Quran does not make any distinction whatsoever between Islam and other religions prior to it. In fact, it categorically declares that all the religions which are revealed before, they had certain characteristics. And the characteristic regarding worship, I'm going to quote from the Holy Quran. وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ وَنَفَاءَ. And they were not ordered but to worship Allah. And yabudu, hunafa, with total dedication, having no ulterior motive of any sort which could divert their worship to other than God, even their own purposes. So worship is completely and totally dedicated to the memory of God. And in this, the Holy Quran says, all other religions which came before shared this central aspect of religions. And there is no difference between that and Islam. The difference is in the style of some forms of worship. When we say prayer, that is a word which is of two types. It refers to a single individual prayer, like raising hands, or even in your heart, you beg Allah for something. The word prayer is applicable to that beseeching to Allah and begging for Him. But it also is a religious term which applies to the 5 times prayers which Islam requires the Muslims to perform, and plus other prayers. Now this is formalized worship, and it's a part of the worship, not the entire worship.
Yeah.
So when you speak of prayers, the prayer does not in Islam mean only to pray to Allah for anything you like. It particularly refers to the organized style of worship as referred to in the Holy Quran by the word as-salat. So salat is one aspect of the English word prayer, which is covered by the English word prayer. And the second aspect which is not covered is dua. And the Holy Quran, speaking of dua and its importance, says, قُلْ مَا يَعْبَعُ بِكُمْ رَبِّي لَوْلَا دُعَاؤُكُمْ. Tell them, what would God care for you? Why should God care for you if you don't pray to Him? This is not worship here. It is dua. In stress, in all sorts of problems, when you pray to Allah, He listens to you. And that indicates that your prayer is for yourself, not for the sake of Allah. The Holy Quran says, Ud'uni astajib lakum. Pray to me, and I'm going to answer that prayer. Now, this is a very vast subject which cannot be dealt with here. I have been speaking on this subject during my sermons, Friday sermon khutbat, and it turned into a long series. So if you could have access And you can easily have access to those video and audio recordings. Then find time to listen to them from beginning to the end.
Inshallah.
Inshallah, most of your questions will be answered there. Thank you.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
We have a couple of questions from a guest in the audience, Mr. Munir Muhammad. Written question is put forward.
Right.
The first is, how can you define Ahmadiyyat in the world of Islam?
How can you define Islam? This is the question. We believe that Ahmadiyyat is Islam and nothing more and nothing less. So whatever the definition of Islam is, Ahmadiyyat fits in perfectly without any of its borders shadowing across or getting across the boundaries of Islam, nor any of its part not touching the boundaries of Islam. So it coincides perfectly and completely. But that is a question which may be debated by others. They say you're wrong in that claim, but this is our claim. Right?
The second question is, do you see Ahmadis working together with Malika or Shias or other sects within Islam together in the future?
Already I have answered this question. Ahmadiyyat has always taken the stance that the unity of the Millah, that is the Muslim Ummah, is highly essential for the benefit of Islam itself. But when you talk of Islam and start trying to forge unity in the world of Islam, then instead of achieving this purpose, it begins to split the world of Islam further. And in the name of religion, many views are put across with such enthusiasm and sometimes with such frenzy that the very concept of unity is washed overboard in blood. So that is why Ahmadiyya community has always emphasized the realization that the only way the Muslims of the world can meaningfully unite is to leave the religious differences to them and to God, and to unite in the political interest of Islam. That is not Islam, in fact, the political interest of the Muslim world. And that political unity has to be forged in two planes. And both are very difficult. First, it is the international plane of one Muslim country, the relationship between one Muslim country and another, and so on and so forth. Now, this is a very difficult task. Whoever undertakes this will not find it an easy task. There are rivalries which are historic rivalries between Iran and the Arab world. Now, they have been further compounded by their religious differences. Most of the Arabs are Sunni Muslims and most of Iran is Shia Muslim. So the rivalries do not remain confined to these religious differences at all. The rivalries are in fact rooted much before Islam came into being. You know, Arabs and the Persians and the attitude of the Persians towards Arabs as small things, the Bedouins, the nomads, who had no civilization, that created many a problem between the Arabs and the Iranians. And this question has not died. It did not die with Islam. For a while, it was subdued or made dormant, shall we say. But it began to rise again, and that is the reason why Shiaism spread more in the Iranian influence areas than in the central areas of Islam. Because these rivalries, their concepts helped Shiaism to grow there much more powerfully than elsewhere. For instance, according to the Iranian system of government, it was the only acceptable system to them was that every king or monarch had a right to bequeath his right to rule to his children. And it is always the son, first son or the second son, but it has to be the offspring of the ruler who would inherit the right to rule. Now, this Iranian view was not changed by the influence of Islam, because the conversions in Iran did not take place at the time of Hadhrat Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is only a rare phenomenon of Abdullah bin Salam becoming a Muslim or somebody else. No, I mean Salman Farsi, etc. That was a rare phenomenon. But when mass-scale conversions took place, this was a time when the center of Islam had already got split into two different directions. And Alawites started vying for political domination, and the Abbasides used the Alawite sentiments to get to power, and ultimately Iran became the power base for this political movement which used religion as an instrument. And because that instrument of religion was more acceptable to the Iranian historical thinking of and traditional thinking of inheritance, so it went well with them, and that is why still the power base of Shiaism is in Iran. So that is one rivalry, of course, but it was also created by the background of the Iranian Arab difference of understandings regarding political systems, etc. But there is more to it. I don't want to go into more detail. Now, how would one resolve these differences and root them out? The only time when they were almost subdued was when religion played its role as predominantly. But unfortunately, right in the beginning, this rivalry between Shiaism and Sunnism began to rage, particularly in Iran and Iraq, the bordering areas, etc. So I doubt if there is any leader in Islam of that stance who could really uproot these old historic rivalries. Then there are rivalries between Jordan and Syria, rivalries between Pakistan and Afghanistan, rivalries between this and that, Saudi and the House of Jordan. So these are the issues. The only way, I think, one can sort of forge a sort of unity would be to convince these powerful people who control their respective areas of domination that for the sake of your own self, for your own survival, forget for a time being of all these rivalries. Even if you can't resolve them, come to an understanding on the principle as the Holy Quran itself has laid. And that is the only way out of this very deep and complicated problem. The second problem I'll come to, but first let me refer to the principle as mentioned in the Holy Quran. And that principle is that of coming to the commonalities. The Holy Quran says, "Qul ya ahlal kitabe, ta'alaw ila kalimatin, sawa'in bainana wa bainakum." O Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, tell the people of the book that come to the common points. If you want to put your united strength to the service of mankind and you want to achieve something worthwhile, then why not start with the points of agreement instead of emphasizing the points of differences? So within the differences, a formula can be found in which, if commonality issue is made to govern your relationship, and if the common ground of agreement in certain areas is made the starting point for a joint service of mankind, that is the only way where you can religiously and human from the human point of view make yourself a godly people who would serve their responsibilities to not only to God but to mankind. This is the principle which, according to the Quran, should have been accepted by the Jews and the Christians alike. Not because they believed in the Quran, because the rationality in this is so powerful that if anybody rejects this, he would reject it to his own detriment. Why can't they apply the same principle within Islam? So that could only provide us, the only starting point of unity, not religious unity, but unity in the political concept of Islamic entity. And that when we speak of political concept of Islamic entity, we don't use the word Islam, we use the word Muslim nation. So that is one area where we'll find difficulties, but the answer lies in what I have just have told you. The other is the area of finding resistance from both the divisions within every Muslim country. Every Muslim country is divided on an above-below plane. Those who are have-alls in politics and government, those who are have-nots in politics and government. These are the two divisions found in every Muslim country today. And those who are deprived of power, unfortunately, utilize the ignorance of the people and exploit their attachment and dedication to religious ideology to a degree that Islam becomes the splitting force between Muslims and Muslims. Not on sectarian plane, on political plane. So how would you overcome that problem? I have been trying to persuade the Algerian leadership in exile in France to use a more rational and logical approach than this extremist approach they are following. And it took me a better part of 4.5 hours or more to ultimately subdue their, what should I say, not hatred, but attitude of violence even towards me, that he dared to attempt such a thing. The tempers ran very high in the beginning, but gradually they began to see reason and they subdued, and some became friendly, and we all parted as human beings. But what I'm telling you is from my own experience. These people on the other, there's one section which belongs to the government, the other plane, lower plane, which belongs to the people who feel deprived of government. Their leadership, unfortunately, has gone into the hands of the mullahs, the religious clergy, who are the main people who emphasize the Islam, the role of Islam to be related and to remain dominant in all spheres of human activity. And having established that principle that Islam is not just a religion, it is a way of life which comprises everything, in which humans can take interest. They say, so we have a right to politically agitate Muslims in the name of Islam. Now this is only a license they draw from this, and they are not interested in all the other areas of Islam, and they give a lie to their claim that Islam is a comprehensive religion. This is one of the things which I have been trying to bring to their notice of attention, that look here, Islam also cultivates certain habits, decencies, good behavior, neighborly behavior, sacrifice for the cause of the poor. Have you started such movements in the name of Islam, or ever started such movements in the name of Islam in your countries? When this so-called devilish government of Muslims was not in power. Prior to that, when did you attempt to do this? And when did this so-called devilish government of yours ever enforce people to violate the moral teachings of Islam? When did they plead in the name of their law that you are not permitted from now on to tell truth? When you go to the courts, always tell lies, this is what law demands from you. And you usurp other people's rights and do all sorts of crimes in relation to each other in the society. Where did they say that? And if they did not, Islam said you do this, the counter of it exactly. And why don't they do it? Are all these societies cleansed of their individual and social crimes to which I am briefly referring? So this again requires a jihad, not with war, now not with sword, but a jihad or a holy war in which those who preach, they will be beheaded. They will not behead. And that is the only jihad which is found to be valid with reference to the religious history. All the prophets were treated exactly like this. They raised a moral issue. They said, don't do this, this is bad for you. Don't tell lies, don't usurp the rights of the people in your trade and economic activities and this and that. Prophets came with one single message sometimes, highlighting the importance of that message in relation to that part of history. And they were opposed, they were attempted to be murdered, their followers were actually murdered or thrown out of the country or attempted or sometimes were burnt alive. Who used the force? The founders of religions or those who opposed them? But this is something which is beyond the understanding of the present day Muslim clergy, unfortunately. So it's not an easy problem. You say, why don't we unite them? Come on, let's become brothers. These are the real problems which would not permit you to become brothers, except superficially. And the superficialities don't mean anything. Right? Thank you.